Heat is the energy that flows from a place with a high temperature to a place with a lower temperature. In this video, we're going to look at two ways that can happen. We're going to look at conduction and we're going to look at radiation. But what does that word temperature even mean? Well, temperature is a measure of how quickly the particles in something are vibrating. It's a measure of their kinetic energy. Let's have a look at this example. This could be an iron rod, let's say. We're heating it at one end with a heat source, for example a flame from a Bunsen burner. This end gets very, very hot very quickly. The particles here are vibrating very, very quickly. This end is not hot yet, it's at a lower temperature, so the particles are vibrating slowly. The point is, we've got a temperature difference between this end and this end. We have a high temperature here, we have a lower temperature over here, which means that heat energy will flow from this side to this side. This brings us to our first method of heat being transferred or heat moving, conduction. Now, in conduction, it's the energy of these vibrations that gets passed along through the particles. So these particles are vibrating, they make the next ones along vibrate, and so on and so on and so on, until the energy makes its way all the way across the rod. When it does this, it means these particles over here are no longer vibrating slowly, they're vibrating quickly. In other words, the heat energy is being transferred from this side to the other side. Out of solids, liquids and gases, which ones are the best at conducting heat? Well, gases can't conduct heat because their particles are too far apart, so if one was vibrating it wouldn't necessarily impact on the one next to it. Liquids are also poor conductors. That's because the particles are not tightly bonded together, so again, if one particle is vibrating, there's no reason for that vibration to necessarily be passed on. So conduction happens best in solids. In fact, the best sort of solids it works in is metals. There's another way that heat can travel, however. Think about how heat travels from the sun all the way to planet Earth. Now, the sun is at a very high temperature, obviously. This part of space where Earth is cold, so the heat will flow from the sun to Earth. But that cannot be done by conduction. There are no particles there to vibrate. This way is called radiation, and it is a totally different way of transferring heat. In radiation, the heat moves as infrared waves from the object with a higher temperature, in this case the sun, to the object with a lower temperature, the Earth. It's infrared waves, which means it does not need any particles. It also travels at the speed of light. Interestingly enough, the colour of an object can tell us about how it responds to radiation. Objects that are black are very good at emitting radiation. Objects that are black are also very good at absorbing radiation. Think about the colour of the back of a fridge. If you look at the back of a fridge, you'll find that many of them are actually black. That's because it emits the heat. The job of the fridge is to take the heat away from the food, and the black colour at the back helps that heat escape. Think about the absorption properties. Think about a solar panel. If you're making a solar panel, you will make it black so that it can absorb the radiation from the sun. White or silvery colours, on the other hand, are very good at reflecting. They don't absorb radiation, they don't emit radiation, but they do reflect it. That's it for conduction and for radiation. Do remember that there are lots of other videos on all sorts of topics in GCSE physics. Please check them out and do consider subscribing to Physics with Mr. Drew.